Today we answer the age-old question, which is better, Japanese or Korean? By now, you probably already know that the Japanese passport is the so-called best passport or strongest passport in the world, or so you're told by about 3 million articles online. But I want to challenge this assumption by whipping out my Korean passport and compare them shoulder to shoulder and see which one really is better. Before we start, remember to hit the like button so that you get more high-quality videos like this one from the YouTube algorithm. Note that I'm gonna use the phrase Korean passport to refer to the South Korean passport in this video because I'm just too damn lazy to say just one more word. But if you're interested in the North Korean passport and the mere 7 countries that it has access to, then I've got you covered. There's an entire video dedicated to the North Korean passport on YouTube. Check it out on the upper right. Alright, if we go on to the Passport Index website right now, we'll actually see that the Korean passport currently has a higher mobility score than the Japanese one. Most of that is due to COVID. Some countries decided to ban Japanese passengers for now. But that could change at a moment's notice, and assuming that the pandemic will end, then we should look at their respective visa-free travel map and how many countries each passport has access to under the normal situations. As you can see, not much is different. Both countries are relatively well off in terms of economics, development, and diplomacy. To quote Tolstoy, happy passports are all alike. Every unhappy passport is unhappy in its own way. That being said, Japan is definitely ahead of Korea in many regards. Like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, Japan got into the US visa waiver program in 1988, whereas the Korean passport only got the visa-free treatment in 2008, lagging a full 20 years behind. No wonder it used to be a colony of Japan's. But hey, at least right now, at this very moment, Koreans and Japanese can both go to America without visas, regardless of the price they pay, more in that video I just mentioned. The major difference between these two passports comes down to 3 countries: China, Russia, and Mongolia. In a second, I'm gonna tell you why, but before that, remember to hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss any future videos. In case you didn't know, Japanese citizens can go to China for 15 days, no strings attached, whereas a tourist visa is required for Koreans. Why is that? Well, back in 2003, without any prior notice, China unilaterally opened its doors to Japanese visitors. To this day, there hasn't been any official reason given to justify this decision. One theory that's floating around though is that China's economy was damaged in 2003 due to the outbreak of the SARS disease. In response to that, China decided to allow citizens of Japan, Singapore, and Brunei to come over for tourism purposes, considering that people from these countries are wealthy and unlikely to overstay. We have no way of finding out whether that's true or not, but Korea was obviously jealous of this special treatment. In 2009, Chang Un-chan, Prime Minister of Korea, brought up the topic of visa arrangements during his meeting with China's then Vice Premier Xi Jinping. However, the talks didn't come to fruition in the end. According to sources, China just wasn't interested in letting its citizens to roam free. So the Korean passport might not catch up to the Japanese one just yet. But hold your applause, that was only when it comes to China. For traveling in Russia though, the Korean passport takes the cake, for it offers 60-day visa-free visit to the Russian Federation. The bilateral relations are strong between the two countries, with Korea and Russia entering a strategic partnership in 2008. The two sides signed a visa waiver agreement in 2013, allowing citizens from both sides to visit each other freely for up to 2 months at a time. The Japanese, on the other hand, have never received visa-free treatment from Russia, despite maintaining a consistent and growing passenger flow. So why doesn't Russia welcome Japanese travelers when almost every other country does? Well, it turns out that Japan and Russia don't exactly see eye to eye on many issues. Historically, Russia has always been pretty aggressive towards the Far East. That aggression led to the Russo-Japanese War about 100 years ago. To everyone's surprise, the feudal society of Japan defeated the Russian Empire and industrialized European power. Or, in the words of this Japanese comic at the time, we, Japan, totally F you up. Russia's defeat in this war indirectly caused the end of the empire and the communist revolution. Later, in 1936, Japan signed a mutual defense agreement with Germany targeting the rising Soviet Union, who continuously had small-scale armed conflict with Japan. But those scuffles quickly turned into a full Russian invasion at the end of World War II. This time, it was Japan that took a beating, well, mainly because it was too busy handling the American nuclear bombs. The rough patches between the two countries never really healed, considering that Japan has been in the American camp ever since the Cold War. But ideological differences is the least of their worries, as territorial dispute over the Kuril Islands has become the main focus. The Kuril Islands is an archipelago situated not too far from Hokkaido. The ownership of the islands switches every time Russia and Japan go to war, and right now they are under Russian control. In recent years, the two nations have been discussing the possibility of signing a peace treaty, which will include a compromise solution to the Kuril Island dispute.
Over the course of this past year, Japan has raised objections to the civil and military buildup that Russia has been carrying out on the southern Kuril Islands at the heart of a dispute between the two countries. And of course, as we just heard President Vladimir Putin saying there are still objections to Japan's military cooperation with the US. But both leaders speaking in Vladivostok today said that they do still very much want to sign a peace deal between the two countries.
International observers believe that mutual visa waivers will not be implemented until the peace treaty is signed. However, the progress on the peace treaty has been very slow. As a friendly gesture, Japan has twice simplified visa requirements for Russian nationals, once in 2017 and the other time in 2018. And starting 2021, Japan is added to the list of passports that could enter Russia and stay up to 16 days by applying for an electronic visa. The application process for an e-visa is relatively simple. Fill out a form, pay $40 and wait for a week, then most people are good to go. But again, it's still extra steps and time and money compared to what the Koreans have. Not to mention that 16 days is not enough to cover the massive country that is Russia, so this round goes to the Korean passport. And then there's Mongolia. It allows Japanese passport holders to come in without a visa and stay up to 30 days, but requires Koreans to get a visa. Why? According to the Mongolian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, there are on average 12,000 to 14,000 Japanese visitors to Mongolia each year in the early 2000s. And in 2006, Mongolia trialed a temporary visa exemption towards Japanese passport holders and saw the number of tourists increase to 20,000, which proves that a visa waiver has a positive impact on the tourism industry. So, in March 2010, Mongolia decided to open its borders towards the Japanese, despite Japan not granting reciprocity. And interestingly, later that year in November, Japan and Mongolia signed a strategic partnership agreement, promising to purchase more Mongolian products and provide more economic assistance. I'll say that Mongolia made a pretty good deal on the visa concession. Although it is pretty hilarious to watch Mongolia, a super empire that used to invade Japan, turning into a third world country that relies on foreign aid. Now you might think that Korea doesn't get the visa-free treatment because it's not as close to Mongolia as Japan. That's not true. Actually, I think Korea doesn't get the visa-free treatment exactly because it's too close to Mongolia. According to the official estimation, in 2003, there were about 20,000 Mongolians living in Korea, which means South Korea had more overseas Mongolians than Japan, Europe, and the United States combined, and the vast majority of them were overstaying their tourist visas. 5 years later, the number of Mongolians in Korea rose to about 33,000, a 65% jump, and considering that Mongolia's entire population was only 2.6 million at the time, that means about 1.3% of Mongolia was in Korea, making South Korea the largest Mongolian community outside of Mongolia. Afraid of the backlash against illegal immigration, the Korean authorities stopped collecting the statistics after 2008, but you can guess that the number has probably only increased since then. This makes any visa concessions on both sides a sensitive topic that no one wants to touch.
Can't touch this.
Fortunately, Mongolia opened its electronic visa portal in 2021, and for $50, travelers from 36 countries can now get their visas online. And it just so happens the very first visitor who entered Mongolia on one of these e-visas was from South Korea. Since we're on the topic of neighborly things, we have to talk about North Korea. South Korean citizens cannot use their passports to visit North Korea. They need to get a special permit from the North Korean authorities. But even before that, they need to seek permission from the South Korean government, which is rarely approved, if ever. So it's fair to say that South Koreans are effectively barred from North Korea. Not that anyone wanna go. And that's it for our comparison between the Japanese and Korean passports. In summary, I think the Korean passport comes really close to the Japanese. Its visa-free countries actually cover more surface area of the earth than the Japanese one. In fact, if you value Russia more than China, it might be the better choice for you. On the other hand, the Japanese passport is more balanced. The Russian e-visa definitely helped, and if Japan and Russia are able to put a peace treaty together, that will cement Japan's #1 place on the passport ranking in the years to come. Which passport do you prefer? And let me know your thoughts about the whole Japan, Russia, Korea, Mongolia situation. Also, tell me in the comments which passport you would like me to talk about next. See you soon. Peace.